Today's story comes from 聊斋志异, or Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, written over 300 years ago by Pu Songling. He spent his life collecting tales from across China. This story is set in the Ming Dynasty, about a man who went from starving in rags to sitting across from princes. But his fortune came with a cost no one could have imagined. What happened left whispers across villages for centuries. But before we begin, if you're drawn to stories with mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly, to legends passed down as truth, then this is the channel for you. I share new stories each week, drawn from folklore, forgotten history, and strange events that linger at the edge of belief. So tap the like button and subscribe with all notifications on so you never miss what's next. Let's begin. Wang Cheng came from a proud family in Pingyuan, a county in Shandong province during the Ming Dynasty. His grandfather, Wang Jianzhi, had once been wealthy and respected and married into a noble family. But when his grandfather died suddenly, debts buried the family. The land was stripped away, and within one generation, the estate was gone. His grandmother vanished soon after, rumored to be grief-stricken, or, some whispered, a fox spirit who slipped away back into the wild. Now, Wang Cheng never met either of them. Wang Cheng grew up in a crumbled old courtyard house, and all he knew about them was these stories. Now, the neighbors kind of pitied him, but they also called him lazy. His wife, who was constantly exhausted from hunger and work, scolded him daily for basically not amounting to much of anything. Now, one suffocating summer night, it was just too hot for Wang Cheng to bear indoors. So he went out and he saw a bunch of villagers sleeping in the ruins of an old pavilion. So he thought, okay, great, I'll sleep here. And then at dawn, all the villagers got up and went to work. But Wang Cheng, true to his reputation, slept through sunrise. When he finally got up, he spotted this glimmer in the grass. So he goes over to see what it is. He picks it up, and it's a gold hairpin. And he looked closely, and the inscription read, 宜宾府造, made for the imperial household. He then heard a voice from behind him. I believe you found something of mine. He turned. An old woman stood under the pavilion's eaves, watching him with these sharp, steady eyes. He returned the pin. She smiled faintly. You are Wang Cheng, grandson of Wang Jianzhi. He was kind, and he loved me dearly. You knew my grandfather? I was his wife, she said. After your grandfather died, I went deep into the mountains to avoid the debt collectors. I heard your parents recently passed away, so I came down to pay my respects at their grave. It was then, speaking with one of the locals, that I heard of your existence, and I could not leave without searching for my grandson. They spoke for a long while. She recalled how his grandfather favored a carved inkstone that Wang Cheng said he still had in his possession. She described the way he used to hold it in his palm when he thought, tapping it gently while composing lines of poetry. Then she whispered a short family rhyme, 8 lines, about plum blossoms in the snow that no outsider could have known. Wang had only ever heard his mother recite it when he was very young. He found himself silently mouthing the second line to her. The more she spoke, the more the past came alive around them. She smiled faintly, brushing a spot of dust from his sleeve. You look like him when you're happy. He invited her to stay the night, eager to learn more about his grandfather. She agreed, though she said softly, I will return to my home in the mountains tomorrow, before word gets out that I have returned and debt collectors come looking for me. But for tonight, let us speak as family. When they arrived, she surveyed the barren house, the broken stove, the torn bedding, and sighed. This is what remains of my husband's line? Wang's wife lowered her gaze in shame. The old woman pressed the pin into her palm. Pawn this, buy rice. In 3 days I'll return. And she did, with food, silver, and cloth. She urged Wang Cheng to work, giving him 3 taels of silver and advising, rise early, never delay. Her tone was stern, almost commanding. She told him to trade the cloth she brought in the capital. You'll make a fine profit, she said. But on his solo journey to the national market, rainstorms slowed him, and it took 4 days to finally get to the capital. By arrival, prices had collapsed. He hesitated, then held out, watching the markets drop each day, hoping for recovery. Finally, after days of waiting, prices began to rise again. But that morning, he overslept. When he awoke and rushed to his stall, he found his bundles gone. Someone had slipped in while he slept and stolen the cloth. Broke and humiliated, he returned to the inn he was staying in. He refused to blame anyone, telling the innkeeper, "It is fate, no one's fault." The innkeeper, moved, offered him free food and shelter. He then went out and wandered the streets for hours, his shoulders all hunched over. He was ashamed to face what was at home. Each shop he passed reminded him of what he'd lost. Hungry and aimless, he drifted towards an alley near the edge of the market. It was there, through the din of hawkers and clatter of carts, that he heard cheers and gasps. Curious, he followed the sound and saw men clustered tightly around cages. Quail fights. He watched fortunes change hands in moments, fists of silver exchanging with every match. His heart pounded. Desperate and with nothing to lose, he spent his last coins on birds. That night, the rain poured. By dawn, he awoke to a dreadful sight. Every bird in the cage was still, feathers matted with rainwater. The quails lay dead. His heart sank. He stared at them in disbelief, feeling the weight of his cursed luck pressing down on him even harder. Kneeling there, he felt hollow, ashamed, angry, unsure if he could even go on. Then he saw movement. One quail remained alive, and as he watched, it pecked sharply at the empty cage. He cursed the rain, but the innkeeper took a closer look. Those birds didn't die from rain. That one killed them. Leaning closer, look at its eyes, sharp and cunning. This is no ordinary bird. With that kind of ferocity, you should take it back to the quail pits, enter it in the fights. Wang trained it relentlessly, rising early and staying out late, practicing with the bird in small courtyards and alleys until its movements were sharp and precise. He entered local matches first, watching it crush every challenger, and soon, his winnings grew. With each victory, word of his unbeatable quail spread, drawing larger crowds and bigger wagers. Silver poured in as his bird became the talk of the city. And as his fame grew, he was invited to the grand tournament held during the Lantern Festival, the largest match of the year, where the prince himself would attend. In preparation, Wang gave his bird a special name for the occasion, Emerald Talons, for the green sheen on its feathers and the sharpness of its strikes. The palace courtyard glittered with lantern light as elite nobles and commoners alike gathered to see the spectacle. Wang's quail tore through the early rounds, defeating birds known by name in the gambling circles. Iron Feather, famed for its endurance, the Red Claw that once left challengers bloodied, and the Whirlwind, so quick it seemed to vanish between strikes. Every victory drew louder cheers, and his bird grew more feared. As the matches narrowed, whispers of his undefeated quail reached the prince's entourage. When only a few competitors remained, the prince himself leaned forward with interest. Now, before the final bout, the innkeeper pulled Wang aside. "I'm sure the prince will offer to buy it," he whispered. "And when he does, Watch my hand. I'll signal when to accept. Wait too long and you'll offend him, but too soon and you'll lose leverage. The prince sent for another bird, stronger than the last, but Wang's quail quickly defeated it. Frustrated, the prince cried out, "Bring Jade Wing from the palace." The crowd oohed. In a short while, attendants arrived carrying a bird with pure white feathers like an egret, gleaming under the lanterns and striking martial bearing. Wang's heart pounded. He fell to his knees and pleaded, "Your Highness, your bird is too fine. I fear if mine is hurt, my livelihood will be lost." The prince laughed, but Wang did not rise. His voice trembled. "Your Highness, I beg you, this quail is all that I have left. If it dies, I will be ruined." The prince's smile faded slightly, his interest sharpening. If it is so precious, all the more reason to test it. The gathered nobles chuckled, but there was one among them, one elder, who squinted and leaned towards another. "Is that not the grandson of Wang Jianzhi?" he murmured. A few heads turned. "I remember his grandfather," another said, "a man of honor and refinement. And look, this is what has become of his line, clawing for survival in a quail pit." Their words carried a deep sting. Backing out now would disgrace him and his grandfather's name and undo everything he had earned. There was no promise of payment, no assurance of mercy, only risk. Yet with seemingly no way to refuse, Wang rose slowly and returned to the pit, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. They released the birds. The palace quail lunged first, beak flashing. Wang's quail crouched low, feathers bristling, waiting. As the prince's quail struck, Wang's bird met it head-on and then let upward, turning the fight into a dizzying dance, up and down, back and forth, wings snapping, feathers flying. At last, they locked together, claw and beak. The prince's bird strained, its power faded, and raged. It thrashed harder, and a flurry of white feathers filled the air. The prince's bird staggered, wings drooping, and finally broke away, retreating in defeat. Gasps erupted. Nobles leaned forward in awe as the prince himself rose, clapping. "Remarkable," he declared. "I must have it." The prince first offered 200 taels of silver. Now, Wang, having just won, he felt full of confidence, and he remembered the innkeeper's advice. So he countered boldly. 1,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The prince laughed at the audacity, but raised it to 400. Wang stood firm, glancing at the innkeeper, who didn't move. The prince raised to 500, then 600. Seeing the prince's growing impatience, Wang hesitated only a moment longer before bowing and accepting. The innkeeper later quietly shook his head. "Yeah, you should have waited one more breath. We could have gotten more." But the deal was sealed. And even with 600 taels of silver, that was enough to change his life for forever. Wang returned home, rich. His wife wept with relief. They rebuilt the house, filled their table with food, and for the first time, he felt hope. Then, hearing the news, his grandmother returned. She praised the house and said, "I helped you rise. Now repay me. Give me the rest of the silver." Wang said, "You said it was a gift." Her expression hardened. "Nothing is free." Confused, Wang refused again. His grandmother's voice turned colder. "You're nothing without me. A lazy, useless boy, chasing scraps in the mud. I gave you everything. And now you think you're a man?" He trembled. I earned it." She laughed sharply. "You did nothing. You're weak, just like your father, soft like your mother. You think that silver is yours? It was never yours. You belong to me, just like they did." The air around them seemed to shrink. Her words echoed in his ears, cruel and cutting, until something inside him snapped. He felt his pulse thundering in his skull. His breath quickened. His jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Rage surged through his body like fire in his blood. His chest twisted, his back tensed, and a red mist seemed to fall over his vision. He was livid, more furious than he'd ever known was possible. Everything in him screamed to lash out, to destroy. Wang's hands began to tremble, his fingernails lengthening, sharpening. His teeth throbbed, aching into points. His skin burned hot. He staggered back, clutching his head. His grandmother stepped forward, unfazed. "Go on, show it. You've only ever been half a man." With a guttural snarl, Wang lunged and bit into his grandmother's arm. She cried out in pain. His wife screamed and grabbed his shoulder, trying to tear him away. But Wang, lost in a rage he could no longer control, turned with his clawed hand and slashed her across the neck. She dropped instantly. The gash was deep. Blood poured from her neck. Her body convulsed, then stilled. Wang blinked. Fury broke. He dropped to his knees, sobbing beside her, horror washing over him. No, what have I done? His grandmother knelt beside them. You loved her. You caused her death. You were in her heart. That makes a door. She pressed her bloody arm to the opened wound on his wife's neck and whispered words in the language of foxes. No human could understand it, but Wang felt every word crawl beneath his skin. The blood hissed, the room chilled. Then slowly, his wife's eyes opened. They glowed gold. Her lips moved, but the voice was not hers. It was his grandmother's. Killed her, but I saved the body. I'll wear what's left. He scrambled back. No! She stood and looked down at her old body, only now it wasn't human. The grandmother's former form had twisted, shriveled, and collapsed into the shape of a small dead fox, fur matted with blood, lifeless on the floor. She said calmly, "Your wife is gone now, but I'm still here." She reached out a hand. "We'll live together now, husband and wife, just like what you had before, only better." When gifts come too easily, there is always a price. Be wary of kindness that demands loyalty, for beneath it may lie control. And above all, do not ignore what runs in your blood, lest it rise and claim you when you're most vulnerable. If this story unsettled you, fascinated you, or made you think, share it with someone who enjoys a good mystery cloaked in folklore. I'll see you in the next story.